my screen with y'all, and Audra is going to, okay. She says she's going to share her screen and nothing is happening. I am pushing the button over and over again.
I'm going to reassign you, Shayna, the presenter.
Okay, that'd be cool. Ah. And now I can do it. Yay!
There you go.
Thank you. I am Shauna Dudley. I'm the manager of training and organization at Texas Parks and Wildlife, and my teammate Audra Wirt is here with me as well, and I'm going to let her actually begin for us today. So I'm going to turn it right over to Audra from the very beginning and let her start telling you a little bit about our ground rules.
All right, folks, thanks for coming. We really appreciate it. As Shauna said, my name is Audra Wirt, and this is an example of something that we use every time we do an online training of any sort. We give folks a little bit of ground rules for participating in the online environment. You've probably been coached on how to be a team player in a live session. Sometimes we have the version of the talking stick so that folks don't talk over each other. And these are kind of ground rules that you can use like that as well. So everyone who has a microphone has an opportunity to speak to everyone joining the class. When you have a large group of people, it's usually a good idea to ask folks to come in on mute or to make sure that they stay muted during the presentation. The reason for this is if anyone has a distracting background noise, the facilitator might mute you. Also, cameras, we love to see your face. We started off with everybody being on camera, and that's really great. Again, if your technology can handle it, but sometimes we can't, or sometimes, maybe if you just woke up on the wrong side of the bed that day and didn't have time to wash your hair and you got a little, rooster tail sticking up in the back or something. And we know that, no, Shauna, you're fine. We know that things happen, right? Shauna and I are seasoned veterans at this point, and so we laugh because we've both been there. So if technology permits, go ahead and use your camera, but feel free to leave it off if you need to. That in mind, I mentioned the little rooster tail in your hair. Of course, this is real life, y'all. Most of us are in a place where we're sharing space with other people, but they're not trained like the folks in our former offices or workplaces were. I don't know how to convey to an 11-year-old that chicken nuggets are not as important as the class I'm teaching right now. We're still having a little bit of trouble with that.
The wireless customer you are calling is not available. Please try again later.
That's a good example of why we keep microphones muted. So we know that this type of stuff is going to happen. It's okay. It's not that big of a deal. We're just going to work around it and minimize those interruptions when we can. So that being said, we do want to hear from you. We need to hear from you. We like to engage with you. Generally, when you come together for a training, it's a time to exchange ideas and comment on things that were said and look over at the person that you just met who's now your new best buddy and confirm that that's a mind-blowing nugget that we need to take home today. Well, we can do that through the chat box. So we will ask some questions in the chat box today. We'll post them with asterisks above and below them so that they'll pop out in that chat so that they're easy for you to find scrolling through. And then you can just type your response into the chat when we are finished. So we want to make sure that when you make expectations clear whatever those expectations are, before a class in a virtual environment is crucial. All right. So now we're going to practice a little bit of what we preach. We're going to ask y'all to introduce yourselves in the chat box today, because there's so many of you in class. If there weren't, we would probably have you come off mic. If you hit the sweet spot for numbers of attendees, around 20 or so, you could probably allow folks to come off the microphone and do the first 2 bullets, name and what do you do, and then put the information from the second 2 bullets in the chat box. But when you go over 20 people in a class like this one, we recommend that you do the entire introduction in the chat box. And so I'm going to go ahead and, well, now it would have helped if I was over in the right spot, and then click enter. So there, I have posted our introduction chat. All right. These are the questions that we would like for you to answer today. All right. So if your time teaching is extremely limited also, it's another really good reason to ask your participants to do all of your introductions in the chat box as well. But keeping in mind that introductions isn't something that you want to skip over. It's the part of the meeting that establishes a safe space for communication and the sharing of ideas and the receiving of ideas. So let's start with myself, and then I'll have Shauna introduce herself last. And then Shauna's going to look at the questions, the responses to your introductions in the chat box and let us know what they say. So my name is Audra Wirt. We met moments ago. I am a training specialist with Texas Parks and Wildlife, and I work under the umbrella of Human Resources. My favorite thing about fall is it's not summer anymore. And the number one nugget I'd like to receive from this class today, because y'all, I always get something from the participants. I'm excited to learn what it is that excites you and how this is going to benefit you, because when I get those nuggets, then I'm able to take them and turn them into solid gold for someone else. So now I'd like to ask Shauna, what do we see in the chat?
Well, I'm going to introduce myself really quickly first, and I may have to turn the finding what's in the chat over to you, because you can probably see the chat better than I, because I have the presentation open on my screen.
I will do that. Go ahead and introduce yourself, and then
and
I'll
I'm seeing them coming in, but they're not staying on my screen.
That's cool.
And then turn that question back over to you. So hello again to you all. I am Shauna Dudley, and I am the manager of training and organization development. So what I do is this, y'all. I train and I bring classes to people, and now I bring them to people through a box. We pretty much, I was on medical leave when the pandemic began, and I came back on April 6th, and at 8:01, I received an email from Liz Stone, who does training in our state parks division. And it said, "Are you planning to take all of your training into the virtual environment?" And I was like, yes, we are. And then I got my teammates, Audra and Matt, on a phone call, on a MS Teams call. I learned how to use that real fast. And we said, I guess that's what we're going to do, or we're going to become irrelevant very quickly. And so we converted all of our classes to virtual classes, and including some of our week-long offerings and everything we do. So this is now what we do. We teach virtually, and it's really been pretty great. There have been a lot of our mantra for the first 2 months were our mantras were hashtag silver linings and small blessings. And we found a lot. And so, that's what we've looked for. What good came from it? Sure, things were not the same as when we taught face to face. Y'all, I love face to face. I love being able to see the eyeballs and the facial expressions and the body language. And I love being able to walk right up next to somebody and kneel down next to them and really have a serious talk. And I love being at Camp Allen where we stay for a whole week and eat all of our meals together. And I love all of that. This was, I have mourned the loss of being face to face. I've literally cried multiple times. However, there is plenty of good that comes from this too. More people are coming to our classes. We are reaching more people than we were when we were face to face. I already know for sure that there are plenty more people coming to your annual conference than have ever come before because they're getting to come virtually. They don't have to spend the money on travel and overnight accommodations. And so they're going to be at your conference. And so please look for the silver linings and small blessings. And I think you'll be really pleasantly surprised. I'll go on to the next two bullets. The favorite thing about fall for me, there's a lot. My favorite season is actually spring, but y'all, I am really ready for fall. I think 2020 has kind of just gotten to me, and I'm ready for fall. I'm ready for cooler weather. I'm just ready for a change. And I'm ready to I'm wearing my fall colors. I wore a flannel shirt yesterday, y'all, because I was just ready for browns and dark oranges, plaid flannel shirt yesterday. So did my younger son. We were like, yep, because like Starbucks did pumpkin spice latte yesterday and all that. So like we were just like, well, it must be fall, must be fall somewhere. So anyway, and the number one nugget I'd like to receive is just, again, like Audra said, we learn from y'all too. So super excited for that. So what kinds of nuggets do people want from this class, Audra, so we can make sure we meet their needs? What are we seeing?
All right. So we are seeing lots of good stuff. We've got some folks who are excited about the cooler weather like we are, and looking forward to the change in the season. Some folks are doing lots of different things. Someone said, I'm retired and I do it everywhere, which I thought was just, yeah, exactly. Some of the nuggets that we're looking to get, I'm scrolling through as people post things, it throws me off. So I got to scroll again, just so you know, this isn't easy, y'all. Make it look easy, but it's not. We want to look for ways to make virtual presentations more interactive, a little more general pointers to make things better. That's great. We can always do that. How to handle the technical aspects of meetings. Y'all, you've been watching us handle all kinds of technical stuff. Can't hear, the video's frozen. Oh, I can't see the chat. Just bounce through it. We figured it out. You know how we figured it out? We fell down a couple of holes. We had to climb our way out and do it again. We want to be able to help them understand how to engage the audience actively, right? So not just passively. And what constitutes a successful virtual presentation. And awesome. Looking forward to is campfires and fireplaces. I'm okay for that kind of hot, but sun hot, Here's some stuff that we're looking to gain. Pointers about presentations and get familiar with WebEx. So we'll talk a little bit more about what we're going to provide today and where you'll need to go to get other information. Let's see. More on WebEx functionality, right? And example, how you use interactions. We'll be able to talk about how you use interactions, but not necessarily just within the WebEx functionality. We'll clarify that here in a little bit. We want to keep the enthusiasm for the message, right? And we want to be able to get good feedback. So keeping those folks engaged so we can get that going. We also want to find out how quizzes work and best practices for how to use the technology and in which situation, what makes presentations effective, how to make it interactive and useful, learning this tool, right?
Okay.
Let's see, whether to record live program for an event and how to, And if two people are co-presenting, is it possible within WebEx to pin two speakers? So Shauna and I are both presenting at the same time today. She's talking, and as am I, and she has these slides up on her screen and she's navigating through. We rehearsed. This doesn't just come naturally. It's not genetic, even though we were only born within 12 hours of each other.
Yep.
This is something that you have to work on and practice. So get your bestie in the group and work on how to do some of these things that we're going to show you how to do today. You'll be so glad you did. It will take everything you give to the public to the next level.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing all of that, Audra. I think we can answer a good number of those questions. And then in what we already have prepared to present to you, and then we will have time for additional questions and answers at the end that maybe come up as we're presenting, but also anything we don't get to in our regular presentation, we can address those at the end. So let's prepare you for the classes that you all are going to teach in this virtual environment. And we're going to start that by sort of reviewing how to best reach adult learners, but doing that in a way of how to reach them in this virtual environment. So now basically Audra and I have switched roles. So now I am the primary facilitator or the host, and she is now going to be really working in that chat box. She's going to be the chat box moderator, or what we might be calling the what y'all are going to be calling the content host. But I know that Mary Pearl and Michelle are also kind of checking out what's going on in the chat box. So for today, you kind of have 3 people looking at your chat box content there. But let's go over. So I just wanted you to kind of know how roles are switching. So let's go over some information about how adults learn best, and then how you address that in this virtual environment. So adults are internally motivated and self-directed. Most people really do want to do a good job, and they'll do what they have to learn. So we need to take advantage of that and build upon that internal motivation. Adults bring life experiences and knowledge to their learning experiences. So we want to include ample opportunities to interact and collaborate. A good rule of thumb is that learners should do something every 3 to 5 minutes. So we want to avoid the 1-hour webinar. Listening to a lecture for 45 minutes and then asking for questions at the end does not really support the way adults learn best. Even our most motivated and self-directed learners are going to find it difficult to remain engaged when they are not an active part of the process. Adults are goal-oriented, so every lesson and every activity needs an outcome. Every activity needs to have a point that is obvious to the learner, and each activity should be debriefed or summarized to reinforce that point. Make sure every moment spent in a virtual environment can be seen as a good investment. Adults are relevancy oriented. So learning should constantly answer the question, why is this important to me? Life lessons should take the why and make it practical and relevant. Adults are practical. Adults need the opportunity to practice so they can be confident in their new skills. And adults like to be respected. So the facilitator should strive to use personal names and recall stories and experiences shared by the learners and bring these into future conversations. Conversations, meaningful activities, and thoughtful design actually show respect for learners. So of all of these characteristics shown here, these characteristics of adult learners, which do you believe is the most important aspect to which facilitators must tend? I believe that Audra dropped that into the chat box for you, and you are to be making a choice. Is it A, internal motivation and self-direction, or is it B, life experiences, or is it C, goal orientation, or is it D, relevancy, or E, practicality, or F, being respected? What do you think is the most important aspect to which facilitators must tend while they're facilitating a class in that virtual environment? I've seen some D's and some F's. I've seen a C. Another D.
Lots of D's.
Yeah,
I
all
did
of the
see
above.
one A.
Ben Hortzman, Ben, after my own heart.
Nailed it.
So here's the deal, y'all. They are all, so Ben kind of is right, all of the above. However, each one of you, being an adult learner of your own, is going to find one or maybe two of these more important than the others. However, that doesn't mean that you get to ignore the other 4 or 5. It maybe means that you believe that 1 or 2 are more important than the others, but it just means maybe they're a little more important, but that doesn't mean that the others don't matter at all. You may believe, like Ben does, that they are all of equal importance. They are all important. You can't ignore any of them. You may personally believe that relevancy is the most important, so you're going to make sure you hit on that. But you really do have to hit on all of them because they are all important to our adult learners. I just threw that question out there so you could see how varied the answers are. They are about as varied as we are as people, but they are all important for sure. And addressing all of these characteristics is one way we show respect to our adult audience. So let's find out how we do that in a virtual environment. So adults tend to be more purposeful. They have specific needs and goals that they want to meet. Their motivation to learn is internally driven rather than imposed, and they want to feel more control over its planning and evaluation. So given the relatively brief time frame allowed for most virtual classes, the design must be very well crafted. There's not a lot of, sorry, y'all, my cat just exited the litter box and she likes to make an announcement. So please forgive Dixie's loud announcement. There's not a lot of room in these virtual classes for spontaneous design as you go initiatives. That's one of the hardest parts of virtual teaching for me. I love to just kind of watch a group and go, ooh, we need to spend more time doing this because of the way they're interacting right now. Or, oh, that group totally doesn't understand this concept. I can tell by the way they're really talking to each other and really trying to dig deeper into this concept. So I'm going to do a little bit more work on this module. There's just not time and room for this spontaneity in these virtual environments. So during virtual sessions, you can use chat boxes to gather the learner objectives or to modify your predefined objectives. That's kind of what we did in the introductions with y'all. We asked for your number 1 nuggets. We have some ideas for what we think your desires to learn would be, but we asked for those as well. I can sort of now add and take away things that I might say based on those objectives that you posted in the chat box. we can also offer relevant examples, reminding learners why this content is so important to them. This allows the participants to feel a greater sense of control during this class. So I believe Audra threw down the question into the chat box that says, what is your WIFM, which means what's in it for me, for this class? And it may be very similar to what's the number one nugget you want from the class that you wrote into your introductions at the beginning. But are we seeing anything wildly different when people posted their WIFMs, Audra?
I think folks are still getting used to what it's like to be a participant in a virtual training.
Okay.
So I think it's interesting. We've only received one reply yet. We'll give folks a few more seconds to figure out where that chat button is, if they can, and let us know. So Cindy says she's looking forward to learning the technology that they'll be using in October.
Yeah.
And so I know that
this is it, y'all. This is the technology.
that's what we're doing. So your participation in it today is part of your learning. And then, we're kind of combining things. We're combining how to send an effective message as well as how to use this medium to do that. Everybody found their chat button. Look at that.
There it goes. Yes.
So, yeah. Someone says, I was waiting for someone to define WIFM.
Yes.
Okay, fair.
Yes. So, so WIFM is what's in it for me. Some people say that is the number one thing that drives adult learning is the WIFM.
Yeah.
And that adults want to know what's in it for me. And that's what should drive everything we do when we plan something to teach adults, is that we should be thinking about what they believe is for me. So, that's why we always want to make sure we know that what they believe is there with them, what's in it for me. So I did just see this question come across, and I am trying to sort of answer questions as I go. So you're going to we're teaching a lot of the information that will be helpful to you as we go. So rather than just sit here and answer questions for 2 hours, we're teaching you some content that will be helpful and answer questions kind of at the same time. So when I mentioned that I am now the primary facilitator or the host, that means basically I'm the teacher. I'm playing the role of y'all, because in October, you're going to be the presenter or the teacher or the primary facilitator or the host. A lot of different names for the person that I am playing right now. I'm the one giving all the new information, the new content. I'm the one being the teacher. Audra is the one monitoring the chat box. She's the one. I'm not looking at the chat box, y'all. And I highly recommend that when you are the one teaching the content, that you don't watch it either. It's
I'd like to
distracting.
Break in and are getting a lot of questions about that in the chat box. And our intent is to have a team.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to go into.
Assist the presenters with managing the chat box, managing the WebEx, so that all you will have to do that the day of or the times of your presentation is just present. And use some of the techniques that Shauna and the team are teaching you here. But rest assured, you won't have to manage the WebEx and the chat box. We will provide assistance to do that.
Right. So what Audra's doing for me today, and I know that Michelle and Mary Pearl are helping a little bit as well, Texas Master Naturalists are going to provide someone for you. They're also going to provide another person to be your technical troubleshooter. So all you have to do is teach. You're going to only have to provide your slideshow and you don't have to bring along your teammate like I did. Everywhere I go to teach, I bring a teammate to watch that chat box. Everywhere Audra goes and teaches, she brings a teammate to watch the chat box. Every time Matt goes to teach, he brings a teammate to watch the chat box. Y'all don't have to do that because your amazing hosts are providing those people for you. I cannot begin to express to you how fabulous that is that they are providing those people for you, because it's just all best practices say you cannot teach a class without that person. And the fact that they're providing that person for you is just one of the biggest gifts in the world. So all you're going to have to do is teach. So that's really very exciting. So y'all, we're going to get to a whole bunch of questions about like all the technical pieces of this in just a bit. I think if you can hold off on the, like, how does WebEx actually work? If you can maybe if calm that little heart palpitation of the technical piece for just a bit, we'll get to that. And I think then we'll carry on with how to kind of make the class, make it engaging for the virtual audience, and then we'll talk about how to actually make the technical piece of that work, because that's easy, really. All right. So I saw a bunch of your WIFMs, your what's in it for me. So let's keep on going. So that's one way to keep people engaged. I know that that's one of your nuggets you want, is this chat box. Keep people in the chat box. And that's what your content host will be doing, that content host that TMN provides for you. So another aspect of adult learners is they tend to be more experienced. They've accumulated knowledge over time with their life, and this has become a resource for further learning and development. They want to participate fully. They want to share. They want to collaborate. So use the chat box to have participants express their thoughts on a topic or a task, particularly in relation to their own work. You could also ask for participants to collaborate by having a discussion in a virtual breakout room or in the chat box, or you could even have a few, I would recommend just a few, folks come off their mic for a bit of a class discussion. Remember, learners should do something every 3 to 5 minutes. Now, just a note here, for this particular presentation that you're going to be doing in October, virtual breakout rooms are not going to be enabled, but it is something, if you're going to continue to use this knowledge that you're learning today about how to change your face-to-face classes into virtual classes, knowing how to where you could make things go into a virtual breakout room is important. That's why I didn't take it completely out of the slideshow, but it's not going to be an option for you in your October presentation, but it can be an option for you in the future in other presentations. I know I love breakout rooms too. And I've created all kinds of workarounds, even because I work in Microsoft Teams all the time that doesn't have breakout rooms. And I just send people out to create extra meetings. I'm like, go create a new meeting with this little group of 4 and then come back into this meeting. So I love breakout rooms too. But we're not going to be using the official breakout room. Some platforms like WebEx can have, like, it's a feature. My platform that I use all the time, it's not a feature. I found a workaround, whatever. You can have people in your chat box. There is a way to privately chat one particular person. So you could have 2 people break and just chat with each other and chat that way. So have kind of a partner conversation. So if you, in your chat box, you see that right now you're chatting to everybody, but you can click that down arrow and you can find just one person. So you could partner people off and have them chat one-on-one. And so you could have a pseudo partner discussion that way, even though we don't have breakout rooms. But remember, learners should do something every 3 to 5 minutes. So talking in the chat box or coming off their mic, doing something. Adult learners tend to be more problem-centered. They focus on real challenges and tasks with a strong preference for how-to information. They want to see an immediate connection to their real-world challenges. So use chat boxes to identify current issues, analyzing real-world scenarios. You could also use interaction in the chat box with polls or sharing and using feedback via emojis. So a lot of times we'll just say, you know, put a smiley face in the chat box if you're with me, or, you know, smiley face or sad face on how you feel about getting ready to prepare for your October conference. So sometimes we'll use emojis like that. Adult learners tend to be more, I do mean emoticons, sorry, emoticons. Thank you for catching me on that. Adult learners tend to be more now focused, and they have concern with impact in the short term, meaning they tend to sort of view learning as a means to an end rather than an end to itself. And their short-term memory is activated by small chunks of material. Like think of a phone number being 7 digits, or you add the area code and then it's 10. But if it were more than that, you wouldn't remember it. It's why we can remember phone numbers, social security numbers, those kinds of things, but then we can't remember, you know, at my institution, we can't remember our 11-digit CAPS employee ID number because it's 11 digits, and whoa, that's just 1 digit too long, and now I can't remember it. So small chunks of material in small chunks of time. We need to make sure that our information is concise and broken down into small chunks, and it's explained with its immediate application. So lectures shouldn't last a long time. And again, remember, we should be asking our participants to be doing some sort of something every 3 to 5 minutes. Adult learners also tend to be more safety concerned, and they need to maintain their self-esteem. It's important to inform participants up front that the power of the session will be greatly increased if everybody contributes their knowledge and their experience. So you can create a safe environment by having people contribute to easy or small things at the beginning of your session, and then build up to greater complexity. You can also ask open-ended questions first to give someone a little thinking space. If you feel like you need to reach out to someone in a private chat to provide one-on-one feedback, you can use that. But you're really trying to provide a safe environment where people feel okay and like you're in, you know, that whole what's said in Vegas stays in Vegas. You want to provide and create that trusting environment where people feel safe to share their knowledge. And so that's up to you to sort of create that environment for them. And so they'll be willing to share. Adult learners like to be collaborative. It promotes creativity and critical thinking in learners. It allows learners to construct knowledge through social interaction. The overall learning process is more robust when learners are allowed to collaborate. It increases their feelings of connectedness. So open with maybe an icebreaker. Open with introductions early on in the process. Use the chat box to ask questions, to add comments and information, and give more examples on what we're talking about. So use that chat box to continue that collaboration. And adults also like to have that connectedness. When they have a sense of presence, it allows them to identify and make a connection in their space and create a context for their learning. Presence allows the learner to personalize their learning experience. It also influences the authenticity of the learning experience. So we take all of these aspects and characteristics of adult learners and ways that we have figured out how to apply those things in a virtual environment with our chat box and our microphones. And now we look at this really amazing model. But please don't get overwhelmed when you first see it. I'm going to talk you through it. This model was presented in an article about webinars and how we're doing them all wrong. I think I don't know how to move that little picture of me off there. Okay, there you go. It was in this article about how we're doing webinars all wrong and how we should be providing our participants with a digital experience. So this model suggests that we provide opportunities for our participants to learn, say, do, and reflect all throughout the course we're teaching them. So we should be teaching them, or they should be learning, 3 outcomes per hour and 1 earth-shattering tool. So a total of 4 or more of those learn tactics from that upper left-hand box. So you look at those concepts, statistics, metaphors, cause and effect, personal relevance, tap into internal motivations, 3 per hour and 1 earth-shattering tool. So 4 or more from that box per hour. And we should be providing them the opportunity to say something at least once per hour. So they should be doing at least one thing from that upper right-hand box every hour. So we should be allowing them to do callbacks for clarification or small group shares or jotting something down in the chat box, giving an example, but one thing from that say box once per hour. Then we should also, not instead of or an or, but an and, we should be allowing the participants the chance to do 2 of the activities in the do box in the lower right-hand corner 2 times every hour. So we should be engaging their senses and emotions through these activities at least twice an hour. So we should be letting them do an exercise or do a simulation or do some brainstorming at least twice an hour. And also, we should give the participants the chance to reflect on what they're learning for 3 to 4 minutes every hour and for 30 minutes at the end of each day. So 3 to 4 minutes every hour, we let them review or synthesize or reinforce their learning, connect it to prior experiences. 3 to 4 minutes every hour. And then if it's a longer learning session, a good 30 minutes at the end of the whole day. So at first glance, and maybe even second glance, this model can feel a little overwhelming. If, however, you break it down and really apply it to your presentation, I think you will find that it's completely doable. I think you'll find that if you set up your presentation or the class you're going to teach, whatever word you use to call what you're going to be doing in October, you'll find that you are doing this same kind of thing when you are teaching face-to-face. You're involving your students. You're asking them to do things. You're asking them to answer your questions. You're asking them to turn and learn and talk to the person next to them. You're asking them to jot something down in their journal. All of these same things can be done in a virtual environment. So you all got a learning journal today with a whole bunch of blanks. So you can be completing that learning journal as you're going. So that's addressing things on this model. You've been asked to participate in the chat box. You have been asked to think about things that you all do in a face-to-face environment. You really, really can still do in a virtual environment. I promise. You really can. You may have to think a little bit outside the box, which sounds counterintuitive because now you're teaching in a box, but you really can make those things happen. So this is the model that my team uses kind of as our Bible as we prepare classes for folks now to make sure we're following the learn, say, do, reflect model. But if you have any kind of teaching in your background and you've been doing this before, these are the same kinds of things you were probably making sure happened in your face-to-face classes, face-to-face presentations. So it shouldn't be too hard of a stretch for you to do these kinds of things in a virtual environment. A few other research-backed practice, wow, y'all, research-backed best practices that I want to make sure you know about for the virtual environment especially is this. For every 75 minutes of instruction, you should be providing a 10-minute break. I know that in a face-to-face, you could probably push this to closer to 2 hours maybe before you provided a break, because you could look at them and you could tell, okay, they're not wiggling in their seats. They're so engaged. They don't need a break. I can tell. Or, maybe that one person needed to get up. So you let that one person, you made eye contact with them and you could tell they need to go. You let them go and they came back. Then no one else really needed that break. But in a virtual environment, that part is different. People are sitting still at their desks, staring into a screen. We do need to provide a break more frequently. So for every 75 minutes of instruction, you should provide a 10-minute break. Now, we're going to look at something in a minute that shows a little bit of variance on that. And there can be a little bit of variance, but that's kind of best practices. So virtual classes ideally should be less than 2 hours in length, but you can extend that to about 4 hours. And I know that some of your sessions are 4 hours. And if they're engaging and you're following that break rule, you can do that. Y'all, Michelle Haggerty and I have taught a few classes since this pandemic began that were 6 hours. Now, they were multiple 1-hour modules kind of throughout the 6 hours. And they were to a very young audience who I think maybe doesn't get as stiff in a chair as maybe someone old like I do. But 6 was a little much. 6 was hard on us as the facilitators, hard on them. I really wouldn't go more than 4. And the way that they've set up your 4-hour slots, there are breaks and things like that. And I think that will work. But I really wouldn't go over 4. And none of your sessions for this conference are over 4. Highly recommend that you send a pre-session announcement. So there are plenty of those going out about the conference, but I would additionally send out a pre-session announcement if you're able to see the people who are coming to your session. I would additionally send a pre-session announcement to the people coming to your session. If you have pre-work for them to complete before they come, add that to that pre-session announcement. However, don't call it that. Y'all, people don't do their pre-work. However, if you come up with some kind of clever, fancy, creative name for pre-work, they'll do it. It's a mental kind of thing that goes on when they see pre-work, they don't want to do it, but you call it something else, they'll do it. So what kinds of creative names have you determined that you might call your pre-work that would encourage your participants to do their pre-work? What have we seen in the chat box, Audra?
Hey there. So we do have a few responses. We said, so Mike says, our pre-work for the conference is a 4-page handout that participants can preview and follow the presentation. So maybe a snappy title for that is no action, read only, or maybe burn after reading or something like that, like just something to really get their attention, right?
Yeah,
and then you open it up and it says, no, really, don't set this on fire. What I meant was, I just, and then she's cracking me up. She says, not sure what sexy title to give it, but I do need folks to gather a few things before showing up. So maybe we could call that a care kit or
a scavenger hunt.
Or a scavenger hunt. Tell them they have to do a scavenger hunt before they show up. And those are
I
the
just saw that one too. Your mission, should you choose to accept it.
Your mission, should you choose to accept it. I like that.
I like that too for Mike's, in case you can't wait.
Yeah. A one-pager with simple instructions, that's fine, but maybe make that into a challenge. So somebody says, you got to get folks to go find a squirrel and watch it. You could tell me you can't come up with a catchy little phrase for that, right?
Squirrel.
Squirrel watch, that little dog.
Send it with a meme. Send it with a meme about a squirrel.
Yes, exactly. And so there are lots of really cool ways that you can use your imagination to get people to put things together. Try the Goose Chase app. Yeah. There we go. So lots of
squirrel. Yes.
Cool ideas, y'all. See, now we've learned something from them, Shauna. We know how to do a scavenger hunt.
Yes.
And
this is one way the chat box works, y'all. This is how you collaborate with each other, is right there. Like if I asked this question in a classroom, we would spend a few minutes and we'd all be shouting out and you'd be jotting stuff down. Well, this is the virtual shout out, right? This is, Mike's like, well, I don't know. I want them to read 4 pages. How am I going to do that? Well, here we go. And you're typing to each other. And this is the virtual brainstorming shout out tool in a virtual environment. Is it as fun? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe it's more fun. Maybe it's less fun. I don't know. It depends on how you define your fun. I mean, sometimes it's more fun. Sometimes it's less fun. I don't know, but we're getting the same information, right? Shy people are very willing to type where they may not be willing to yell out in a classroom. So, pros and cons, y'all. Hashtag silver linings. We got to find them. So, it's either we grab hold of this environment and we do the best we can, or we just don't get to present because it's going to be a virtual conference. So if we want, we got to figure out how to do it, or we don't get to be one of the presenters. So let's make the most of it and figure out how to make it work. So, I can't brainstorm with y'all the way I normally do. So I throw it down in the chat box. And what do we call pre-work? We're having a virtual shout out right now. That's kind of how I've figured out that's kind of how I've kind of embraced this whole virtual thing. Like, I have to do it, or what do I do for my job? Because I do this all day, every day. I teach. That's what I do. And if I don't do it this way, then I don't get to do it anymore until we get to all go back, till I get to start traveling across the state again, which I don't know when that's going to happen. So I might as well jump in with both feet and do it this way. So anyway, okay. So a few other things, and then we're going to take a tiny little break because, the whole 75 minutes thing. Now, I know that you've been offered different slots for the conference in multiple time chunks. I know there's a 1 hour presentation, where you're going to present for 30 minutes and have 15 minutes at the end for Q&A, and then you have 15 minutes to transition and break and get to your next session. So that time at the end that is there for the transition and the breaking at the end to get to your next session, y'all think of that as this is when you would let people out of your room at the conference to go to the restroom, get another drink of water, fill up their water bottle, and walk to the next session. Now, in my head, this is what I think. They don't need to do that. They don't need to walk down the hall to the next session. I could talk all the way up to 50. Because all they got to do is click a button to get to the next session. So don't they need only like 30 seconds to do that? Technically, yeah, that's all they need. However, these are real people with real bodily needs. So we still need to provide them time to fill up their water bottle and go to the restroom and maybe even perhaps, pet the dog or talk to the kid who they might be homeschooling at the same time because schools are not, So that's what that 15-minute for transition and break at the end is for. Imagine that you're letting them leave and walk down the hall to their next class. So that there's the 1 hour session. There's a 2-hour session where you have 90 minutes for your presentation, 15 minutes at the end for Q&A, and then that 15 minutes to walk down the hall to the next class. I'll tell you why it's pink here in just a minute. 3 hours, 60-minute presentation, and then a 15-minute break because we take breaks when they're long. 60 minutes presentation, and then 30 minutes for Q&A, and then 15 minutes to walk down the hall to the next class. And then the 4-hour presentation where you have 90 minutes for your presentation and then a 15-minute break and then 90 minutes for your presentation and then 30 minutes for Q&A. Now, I am suggesting there's some possible alterations to that if you wanted to. I think the 1 hour is, I just don't know there's anything really that you can do to that. 1 hour is 1 hour. So like 30-minute presentation, 15 Q&A, and then walk down the hall to your next class. 2 hours, I think you could possibly do it this way if you wanted to. I think instead of presenting for 90 whole minutes, you could present for 45 minutes, take a 5-minute break, present for 40 more minutes, and then do your 15 minutes for Q&A, and then have 10 minutes for transition and a break at the end. If that's something that worked for you. So if that feels better to take a little break in the middle and, present for a while, take a little break, or, you could do 40, then 5, then 45, you could play with that a little bit. And then the 3-hour, I think you could also go 70 minutes, then take a 10-minute break, and then go 55 minutes, and then have your 30 minutes for Q&A. So just a slightly different way to break up that time, if that's helpful at all. And I think the 4 hours probably okay. The only 90-minute presentation with 30-minute Q&A at the end is 2 hours of sitting still. So it's possible that the more that I look at that, the more I'm kind of thinking you might want to go, you might want to add 15 minutes to that 90 minutes of presentation. I don't know. Maybe leave that one the way it is. Anyway, just a couple different ways to sort of chunk that time, or blow off everything I've said and go with their recommendation, because their recommendations are perfectly fine. This was trying to look at other things that you maybe could do. All right, a couple more things that I want to look at, and then we'll take a little break. Yeah. So as we sort of put together our PowerPoint presentations, which I know you're all very adept at, but just some sort of reminders, how we're going to put our content together. We want to think about the designs and how the slides will engage our audience. As you look at these two selections, which design is more engaging to y'all, A or B? Put your answer in the chat box. Which design is more engaging, A or B? Yes, I'm seeing B's just flying in. Yes. So I agree. I think B is much more engaging. What I would do is I would put B on the slide and I would take everything that's there in A and put it in my notes. One thing I will tell you about being able to present over any kind of virtual platform, WebEx, MS Teams, whatever you're on. We're on WebEx today. It looks the same. I've presented on four different virtual platforms. Once you're presenting, it looks exactly the same. So like I have two screens right now. What y'all are seeing is on this screen over here. And I have my presentation notes, like, the way they pop up where you have the screen that y'all see plus the little notes section, the next slide and all the notes. Y'all, so when I present face to face, I don't ever look at my notes. I know my presentation. I don't look at notes. I don't carry note cards. I know what I'm teaching, and I walk around the room and I teach from the back of the room. I teach from the side of the room. I don't look at notes. When I'm teaching over the box, I write out a full-blown script in the notes and I pretty much read it. Not because I don't know the information, because it keeps me on track and on time. And those of you who know me well probably know that I'm reading it because I'm not meandering around and going off topic. But if you don't, I write the script to sound like me talking, not to sound like some stilted robot. But I can read my script and basically also still look straight in the camera. And most people don't know that I'm reading a script because I've written it to sound just like me. I read the script. I write exactly where I want to push the button for the next little thing to fly in. And so like, it's a beautiful little cheat sheet for you right in front of you all the time. Hashtag silver lining to virtual teaching. Like, I can just put a whole script here. I can take over someone else's class. Like, oh, so-and-so's sick. Oh, well, do they have their script in their notes? Excellent. I can teach it. I don't know what I'm talking about, but if their script is there, I can just read the script and people will think I know this content. Like I've taught it for years because you can just read your script, which you can't stand in front of a class and just read your script like this when you're face to face. But that's pretty much what I do now in virtual classes is I just read my script. So there's a little plus. So write your script or at least put bullets because it's helpful. So when we're also in those PowerPoint presentations, we also have to consider visual design and the contrast of colors, the contrast of the background of the slide, and the contrast of the text boxes and the text. So of these two tables, which table is easier to read, A or B? Yes, B, 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 B. Absolutely. Keep that in mind as you are preparing your slides to make sure you have good contrast on your slide between the text and its background. Also in the area of visual design, y'all, I love finding exciting pictures that sort of capture the whole feeling of everything you're talking about, everything you're teaching, but really be careful to not use them as your entire template, because you can tell that you can't really see the text on top of this busy picture when I use it as a template. Other things we want to be careful of, even when we wash out that picture, it's still a little bit too busy. Even when I make it more transparent, it's still a little too busy. So we really want to be careful of those very busy backgrounds. We also want to be careful of font. We want to make sure that our font is always readable, that it's not too fancy. So we want to stay away from curly fonts and script and really tight fonts. And y'all, just don't use Comic Sans. And we want to always be aware of crazy animation. You know, bringing in text at an appropriate talking point on a slide is absolutely fine. But having it zoom in or bounce in or whirl in gets really annoying for your participants. And we should probably never use sound to your animation. So it shouldn't zoom in or bow, wow, bounce in. Just bring your text in silently and unobtrusively. Now, Texas Master Naturalists will be sending you a standard slide deck that you can use. And you can use this slide deck for your entire presentation if you would like. If, however, you want to use your own slides for most of your presentation, they would really like for you to use the title slide. Use their slide for your title slide. I should probably move my little picture again. And for your final slide as well. So it'll have where you need to, obviously insert your picture and insert your name and your organization and the start time and end time of your session. But they'll be sending those to you so you can use those for everything, but at least for your opening slide and then also for your ending slide. So you'll be able to use those as well. So my clock says 3:09, which means we're not quite to 75 minutes of being in class, but we're close. So I'd like for us to take, I'm not going to do a full 10-minute break because we're not staying another 75 minutes after. So I'm going to break my rule just a tiny bit. But I would like for us to take a 6-minute break. Actually, I'll give us 7. I show 3:09. So I'm going to start talking again at 3:16. That gives you 7 minutes to quickly run to the restroom, grab yourself more water, stand and stretch. And at 3:16, I'll start talking again, and I will see you then. Hi, y'all. I show 316. Before I jump right back into the content, I'm going to address just a couple of things. Clearly, I did not untie my tongue during the break, but we'll see how it goes. I did see a question in the chat box asking where my camera is. So I am currently looking directly into my camera. It is my laptop camera. So the camera that comes inside my laptop is the camera that I use. I use my laptop for the sole purpose of whatever platform I'm using. So MS Teams, that's what we use at work all the time. So that's where I keep my chat option open all the time. And that's where I put for today the WebEx portion. So on my laptop, which is directly in front of me, that's where the presentation mode is of my PowerPoint presentation, and that's where the camera is. So my laptop is lower than my face. Yes. So technically, in a to the most ideal setting should be that you have when you're on camera, and I'm not ideal, but you should have a hand's width below your chin and a hand's width above your chin in the screen. So I really should be, that's where I should be sitting. So oftentimes, really, when I get in and really start to talk to y'all like this, that's about where I should be all the time. And I do get in, and so I saw that Mike's going to have just a conversation about that, about ethics. This is where I would have that. This is where I get in and talk about empathy with people. This is where I have book talks with people. This is where I kind of have the nitty-gritty conversations. I looked funny with my Vogue hands. Yeah, I'm so not a Voguer. But yeah, you're technically supposed to have one hand's width above your head before the screen to the top of the screen and one hand below your face to the bottom of the screen. So if I say that my camera's at 12 o'clock, at 10 o'clock is my other screen. Now, my other monitor is humongous, y'all. My husband used to work at Dell, and we happened to get to test out a lot of things. And so I have a ginormous monitor over here that really, if I'm going to say time like 12, it goes from 11 to like 5. That's how big this 11 to, sorry, not 5, 11 to 7. It's 27 inches, he just told me. So it's a very big monitor. So you can tell when I'm looking over at it because you'll see me turn my head. So I try not to stare at it very often. In WebEx, chat, you can click a chat bubble and the chat box will appear all the time. Don't do it. But at the very top of the presentation screen, so way up here, so I'm looking at you here. So on my presentation, so I can ignore it. But if I want to see, sorry, we've got dogs being fed right now. If I want to see it, I can look over at my other monitor, and at the very top right hand, one at a time, chat will come through. So I can look and see. I gotta try to remember them all, or if they're coming fast, sometimes I don't see them, and I'll miss them sometimes too. But I have to turn my head and look for them to come through that top right hand corner. If I don't want to see them, I just don't turn my head and look. That's a feature that doesn't happen in other platforms. In other platforms, you turn off chat and you don't see anything coming through for chat. So That's how my computer is set up. And then I saw one other question I thought I was going to address, and I already forgot it. I'll think of it. Okay. So let me just tell you what we normally do at this time that we're not going to make y'all do. But this is where normally we actually make our participants do teach backs. Normally we break up the participants into groups and we have them go into breakout rooms and we break them into small groups, and we have 4 groups, a group that learns about researches and then teaches back to the rest of the class about facilitator roles, a group that learns about researches and teaches back about time management, a group that learns about researches and teaches back about engagement strategies, and a group that learns about researches and teaches back about the importance of practice. We're not going to make y'all do that because I'm just going to kind of quickly go through how important these things are and what they are so that we can get to just some Q&A time for y'all. So let's do that. These 4 aspects of presentation and design for virtual classes are crucial to your virtual training, though. So do kind of take note and pay attention to what these are and how to make them work. So we're going to talk about the facilitator roles that are going to be present for the October conference for y'all. So you will have 3 main roles present in your class. The first one is or the primary instructor. This is you. This person is responsible for the primary facilitation of the event or the class or the presentation. This person is responsible for delivering the content to the participants. That's going to be you. You are the host. There will also be a content host. We often call that person a chat box moderator, but TMN is calling that a content host for your conference. This role is responsible for monitoring the chat box for comments, questions, and general engagement. This person's also responsible for both answering questions in the chat box and for bringing certain questions and comments to the attention of the host, who is not going to be seeing the chat box, remember? So TMN is going to be providing this person for you. If you want to provide certain questions or comments for them to, post into the chat, you just have to provide a document for them that says, on the slide that has this information on it, please put this question into the chat box. It's a pretty detailed document that's what we provide. I'll answer that question for you in just a second, Craig. We provide each other that says on the slide that says facilitator roles, where the picture of Alex Trebek is, please cut and paste this question. And then all that content host has to do is cut and paste it. So that content host is cutting and pasting and putting the question in exactly the way I want it asked. So it makes it very easy for the content host. We don't want to provide more work for them because they're already looking at all those questions and comments coming through and deciding, is this a question that I need to interrupt the host and ask right now? Or is this something I need to jot down on this piece of paper over here and ask it at the end? So Craig just asked, how will the content host know when and how to ask the host that question? So I think, if it's urgent, I think the content host might say something like, "Hey, Shauna, can I stop you for just a second? And we have a question that I feel like needs to be asked right now." Or that content host sees that question and holds it and waits until the Q&A time, and then the host can say, "We had several questions come up about this same thing, Greg, and we need to 4 people ask the same question. So I'm just going to ask it once for those 4 people." So it can be up to you when it comes time for questions and answers. If you want your content host to sort of summarize questions that came up during the class, or if you want to allow people to come off the mic and ask those questions out loud themselves. Oftentimes, it's easier to just let people type in their question and let the content host ask them out loud. I like to let people ask their own questions because it keeps them engaged, but it can also, you can derail pretty quickly there, because then adults are not that different from kindergartners. When you say, "Let's hear your questions," they're like, "Well, this one time I saw this bird and he was brown." And, it's like, questions, that's a story, so it depends on how much time you have and how much off topic you're willing to go, how much you're willing to turn the mic over to people. The other type of facilitator that you'll have in your classes that is also being provided by TMN is the technical host. And this person is going to be there to help with any technical difficulties that folks might encounter. So all you have to do, y'all, is just teach the class. So huge burdens taken off of you thanks to TMN. So, like I said earlier, just such a huge gift. Quite lovely.
Jana,
Yeah, please.
can I answer some of the questions that are coming in about content hosts in the chat room?
Yes, please.
So our goal is to have, as she mentioned, both a staff member as a technical host who can help to remove and manage microphones. Can y'all hear me? Am I loud enough?
Yes.
Okay. And then the content host is going to be a master naturalist volunteer who we will have trained prior to. Yes, you can provide your own content host if you have a co-host or a partner in crime that you want to be that content host. And you can also rehearse with these content hosts, volunteers prior to as well. So one of the things that I've been working on this week is setting up the volunteer sign up for these content hosts that are going to be coming from chapters, setting up their training so that they're ready to provide the best service possible to you guys. And then I'm also going to be sending out, and this is side note slightly, but sending out a series of dates where I'll host 1-hour sessions for speakers to join at any one time, where I can give you full reins to test out the equipment. I will make you presenter so you can have the look and the feel of WebEx events from where you will actually sit in October. And at that same time, we're going to try and pair that content host so you can manage that relationship with them as well. That is all pending, so give me another week or two and we'll have that information to use as soon as I can get it all pulled together. Thank you for letting me interrupt.
Absolutely. Okay, another crucial aspect to your virtual teaching is your time management. So it's really important for you to know your objectives. I'm one of those people, and y'all, I've been in the education business for a very, very long time. So I am entitled to my opinion on this. I don't always think that it's necessary for you to share your objectives with your class participants. That's up to you and or up to the organization for whom you are presenting. Some organizations say if you're presenting for us, one of the first things you need to do is share your objectives. So if that's the case, then share your objectives. But you always need to know your objectives. So you need to know your objectives so you know where you're going and so you can stay on task. You need to also consider making use of some time controlled activities. If you're going to role play or have some discussion or give them a short writing assignment, make sure you put some time around that. Give them 5 minutes to do this or 10 minutes to do that, and then watch your time. That's something that in a face-to-face environment, I may say, we're going to do this for 5 minutes. And then I see how deeply involved they are in it. And in my head, I'm like, yeah, 5 minutes is going to stretch to 7.5. You gotta in a virtual environment, you just gotta, that timer goes off and you're like, well, your 5 minutes is up and now come back to me. So we watch those time controlled activities and set those timers. Do allow time for questions on difficult topics, and sort of be aware that seems to always take a little bit longer than you think it will, and definitely longer than you want it to. And always keep track of the passage of time. So our computers, I've noticed that if I'm not VPN'd into my organization, my computer clock doesn't always stay on the real time. So find a device that is keeping track of real time and have it close and know how much time has gone by, and keep track of time. Now, keep this in mind too. The average attention span on a single topic is only about 18 minutes. So make sure you stay under that on your most important topics. Now, to help you with time, your technical host is going to be coming into your class when you have about 5 minutes remaining and play a gentle bell sound. But you do not want that to be the first time you have become aware of time, because that will be when there's 5 minutes remaining, and you don't want it to be like a huge surprise and, oh, shoot, 5 minutes, I've still got 90 minutes worth of content to cover. So really set yourself up where you have clocks showing to you in multiple places so that you can, because you're not going to have someone able to whisper in your ear or shoot you the little elbow that says, keep up, get going, you're running behind. Like, get clocks, watch the clock. Other important aspects are these engagement strategies. So we talked about sending stuff out in advance. So it's nice for folks to get some information ahead of time, maybe an agenda, if that's helpful, or an article to read, or document reviews, or some pre-discussion questions, things that would help them answer that with them question, that what's in it for me question. So it's ideally agendas would go out 48 hours prior to the event so that people are not blindsided. I know that may not always be possible, but that's an ideal amount of time. An article or, some kind of document review, 1 to 2 pages to review, probably not more than 3 or 4 pages in advance. Maybe some discussion questions that will definitely get them geared up, ready to think about the topic that you're going to be teaching about. And, letting them know the things that they're going to be learning will actually help them with that, what's in it for me, or that with them. Then during the event, we definitely want to keep them engaged. So maybe we want to open with a story, or a story that ties into the theme, or share a relevant riddle, or do an icebreaker, or make sure you're doing introductions. Make sure you're getting people talking, and sometimes that is over the mic and with their cameras on, and do their introductions that way if you can. Or maybe you have those chat box conversations going. Sometimes those side conversations can be very annoying, but sometimes it's a great way for people to make connections and do some additional bonding there. That 10-2 method, for every 10 minutes of instruction, give participants 2 minutes to absorb, reflect, and apply their new knowledge. Always make sure that there's some time for collaboration and interactivity. And then every now and then throw in a surprise element, like a joke that you've been saving and practicing for the right moment, or throw in a cartoon like we've done here on this slide. Or even if if you've got one of those 4-hour sessions, y'all, I want to ask them to get up and for 2 minutes do some stretching, or to walk 2 laps in the room that they're in, to just break things up just a little bit. And then those post events are even still important, a way to keep them engaged. So follow up with them within 48 hours of the event. Send them a simple email thanking them for participating. Ask them follow-up questions. Just kind of check in with them. If you had handouts or a learning journal, make sure you provide an extra copy in your follow-up communication. You could give them additional resources for participants in that follow-up email, and then give them an opportunity to provide you feedback. So like we always have our feedback in Microsoft Forms. So we have a link to that, and they can just click on that link and go immediately and give us feedback on the classes that we teach. And so that will allow people to give you feedback. I don't know, Mary Pearl, are y'all giving them a way to give the presenters feedback?
There will be a general event survey, but not a individual session survey. If presenters are interested in having a learning objective survey specific to their session, we can link that, and I'll add that into the resource center for all speakers.
Okay, awesome, perfect, thank you. And then y'all keep this in mind that you are going to need to practice this. If you've never done a virtual class, you are going to need to practice this. But you're probably not going to become an expert between now and October, because it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert. You are experts in some things, but you're probably not going to become a virtual teaching expert. But you know what? You're probably going to be pretty good, because it only takes 20 hours to become pretty good. And pretty good is actually real good. So think through that. If you're a perfectionist, drop that right now. We are still early enough in the pandemic, y'all, that nobody's expecting perfection. If things happen, if there's a little glitch, if you forget to, like how many times someone will say, Shauna, you're already talking, but you're still muted. Oh, okay. Well, I'll unmute now. Or, your camera is still off. Oh, well, I'll turn my camera on. Nobody's perfect at this quite yet, because nobody's had 10,000 hours quite yet to become perfect at teaching in a virtual environment. You might be perfect at teaching in a face-to-face environment, but we're not. And really, are you? I mean, even if you've had 10,000 hours, you might be an expert, but are you perfect? Probably not. Even perfectionists probably aren't perfect at it, like, because there's the real other people in the room that kind of mess with us, right? So allow yourself to become pretty good, and know that that's good enough. So, it is a challenge. So take it and say, all right, I'm going to take this challenge, and I'm going to give myself some hours to practice, and I'm going to work with these tools, and I'm going to find someone to practice with, and it is going to be okay. I'm going to be pretty good, and that's going to be good enough. So I'm going to stop sharing here in a minute to allow you to ask all of your questions and share your comments and tell me your wonderings and your concerns. Please know that I don't make this stuff up. We definitely do our due diligence in the area of research and trying to figure stuff out. Some of it does come from our gut and practice, but some of it also comes from finding out what other people are doing. This is how you can contact me and how you can contact Audra. That all of that is also in your learning journals. So Pearl posted those for you. And so I'm going to stop sharing my screen and come on camera and just be here for you, so that you can start either asking questions in the chat box, or if you want to come off your mic and ask, or if Michelle, you want to sort of monitor and say, I know I've seen this question a lot, or whatever, just start firing away. The learning journals were posted where, Mary Pearl?
Yeah, I was going to make mention of that. So the Speaker Resource Center that you are all invited to as speakers, and should be at the bottom of the email that you received with the link for today's event. That is where we are housing all of our documents, extra resources, WebEx tools, and tips and tricks for you guys. Kind of a clearinghouse of all resources for you as a Master Naturalist annual meeting speaker. And that's where the journals are as well. I'll recopy that link into your chat here in just a second.
And I'm going to give y'all 2 websites as well. One is it's not, hold on. It's a tips and tricks for WebEx website. But I had shortened it and now I got to go to it and give you the actual. There it is. Thank you, Suzanne. I'm happy to, we have over 15 minutes, so I'm happy to help answer questions or help you mull over in person if that's helpful. I also know that sometimes you need to just let it soak in.
I had one question that came in asking about the true mechanics behind WebEx, and I heard that was a pretty common question that we had early on in the meeting today. How do I log in? How do I set up? All of those tools, I'm creating a WebEx 101 document, not only for you as speakers, but also for our participants. That's part of that package that I'm trying to put together by the end of this week, early next week. And then we'll have plenty of time to host those speaker testing sessions where you can join at your convenience and test out your microphone and your ability to manage all those logistics.
And all the questions that you've provided in the chat today about the WebEx stuff, I've written down. So they're all good fodder for that tips document that we're putting together.
And the question about including short videos in your PowerPoint presentations, I don't know if that's a question, is that allowable by TMN or is that, can you do it and show
allowable.
it?
It's allowable, but I would like to test that with you. If that is something you think you're going to use, I really like to test it with you in WebEx so that we get the audio connections just right.
And that's a thing, y'all. Every platform's just a little bit different about, there's an extra little click you have to make before you share your screen to make sure you share your audio as well. So if you are going to share a video, there's an extra little click of share my audio to. It doesn't say it just like that, but it's basically share system audio. And you just have to make sure you find that option and click that in addition to share my screen. And you know what? If you forget to click that, all you have to do is say, oh, I forgot to share my sound with y'all. Hold on. And then you unshare your screen and then you reshare it and then share it with your sound and share again. So I do that a lot. And because I'm not perfect.
I'll also say one of the things that we always are going to struggle with hosting a conference in October in Texas is weather and weather events. So I'm also going to strongly suggest that all speakers consider and I'll send this in an email follow-up, consider sharing their PowerPoint with their designated technical host prior to the conference, so that if there are weather events, for instance, the event that's occurring along the coast right now, that change your connection ability, you have somebody else who can be sharing your slides on the screen, and you can just say, next slide, please. So we're going to come up with some of those tips and tricks, backup tools, and fail safes.
That's another time when if you put your script in your notes section, that's really helpful too, in case someone has to do more than just next slide, please. You know, if they have to present a slide or two for you before you're back online or something.
If there are also links and things that you're wanting to provide to to the people who are attending, and then, or if there's questions you commonly get and you want to provide those links in the chat to everybody, it's also good to include that in your slide presentation or whatever you're using, so that that can be quickly copied and pasted into the chat.
There were some questions about demographics of attendees. So as mentioned earlier, we will be able to share the pre-registered list with you, so that you can not only directly share that pre-conference work, but also have an idea of who and from where they're coming from, is planning to attend your session, knowing that that can change at the last minute with virtual, because you can literally sign up or walk into the room at the last minute. But we will also be about demographics, we will also be opening this virtual conference up to more than just Master Naturalists. So we're hoping to have a much wider reach with this conference than we would have with an in-person presentation of the annual meeting. So consider that as well, that you won't have your typical annual meeting audience. You'll have a much larger range of naturalist-oriented folks in the room.
I saw that I saw someone ask about not using PowerPoint, but using Apple something instead. I have no idea about Apple anything, so I'm sorry.
Apple Keynote, it's similar to a PowerPoint, just made with a different type of program. So we'll be sharing the screen with the presenter, and whatever platform they're sharing their material on, they can share.
And then I also saw,
if you're on a device like that, you might want to download the WebEx app ahead of time. That will help, like if you're on an iPad or something, that will help. So you don't have to mess with downloading it the day of.
Someone also recommended saving their PowerPoint as a PDF file. It's readable by pretty much anybody.
and I also saw Mike talking about just having like a roundtable discussion, no slides at all. I think that's incredibly powerful. I think it would be, if possible, I think, Mike, if you can reach out to your attendees in advance and tell them, you know, cameras would be awesome, you know, kind of cameras encouraged kind of thing. Cause I think those kinds of conversations are super helpful when you can see their faces. I gotcha. I know you know how to do all that.
Their
What?
faces were their thumbs.
Yeah.
So you Their faces or their thumbs, whatever.
Right. Faces, thumbs. We want to see your faces or your thumbs. Yeah. I want to see both your faces and your thumbs. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I've had some pretty intense conversations over Teams, in this kind of environment that I'm not 100% sure would have happened in a room, because I mean, maybe they would have, I don't know, but that happened because there's a little bit of safety behind this screen, and people were really, really vulnerable. So, I think, I don't know, I think it's a great thing to do. I'm so excited for y'all. And very proud of y'all too, just taking the leap and making it happen and not canceling your event. I don't know. Does WebEx allow virtual backgrounds? It does? Okay. Thank you, Ben. I'm glad you were here. $4,000. Wow.
Say what?
That's a lot of people.
That is quite a bit of people.
Per session?
Well, so that's the capacity that is potentially possible. I don't anticipate having 4,000. For those that are still on, we had 627 registrants for the annual meeting as of this morning, which is 100 higher than what we typically have at this point in the year with registration. So we are anticipating hopefully a bigger crowd for the conference, and I'm seeing a lot more non-master naturalists on the registrant list, which is incredible. We did set some smaller classroom limits to see where things start to shape up for the session so far. One of the questions was, will the sessions be recorded at the annual meeting? We're working on that too, making sure that we have the capacity to run that many recordings through WebEx back to back to back. So that's a TBD still, and we'll let you know about that. And then I'll share the recording for this presentation on the Speaker Resource Center when it's over.
So I show that we have about 5 minutes left, y'all, and I'm happy to continue to continue to answer questions or brainstorm things or chit chat or whatever. I could even stay past 4 if that's helpful. But also, if you feel like you have reached your capacity and your knowledge is tapped out and you got what you need, then, I can give you back 5 minutes of your life and you can go about your business. So you're welcome to go if you feel like you're all done for the day, but you're welcome to stay and ask more questions. I'm happy to let you come off your mic and ask questions that way. Yeah, good luck with the hurricane, y'all. Thinking of you, praying for you. Golly, yeah. Good luck with that. I can send the slides. I'll send them to Mary Pearl and let her get them to y'all.
Thank you guys so much for hosting this with us today. We really appreciate it.
Of course.
Thanks for having us. We appreciate it.
You could see some of the very nervous anxiousness of some of the speakers at the very beginning. because this is a brand new thing.
Oh, this is Matt. So give me just a second.
Okay,
Hey there.
I can hear you.
Oh, I'm good. Let me, I'm finishing up with the Master Naturalist. So I'm actually gonna,
There, excuse me.
I'm trying.
Oh, thank you. I could be personal.
So we may have to do a overall training presentation on WebEx to get people more comfortable with the features. We'll probably have to come up with some standardizations for some of the sessions, like which sessions will have open chat. I can't see us doing open chat like this for the big sessions.
Right.
No, not for the general, not the keynotes.
No.
Now, what you can do is you can have questions submitted beforehand, or you can have an avenue, not a chat, but an avenue for people to submit questions as they're listening to the presenter. And then the 15 minutes before the end, then we engage that moderator to then say, okay, these are the questions we received during the presentation. So you give that person, the ability to deliver all of their content without being interrupted, but at the same time, that hope that background host can be making sure that people know that their question has been received and that we're holding all the questions until the end and that sort of thing. So that's one way you can take stuff. And that way, that also, like if you get many of the same questions, then we know like these 5 people need to know this information. So now those 5 questions are just one.
Yeah. The one thing we haven't been able to do yet is since this is such a new pieces of this platform are so new to us, we have not been able to test the just plain question and answer feature. And we're going to need to do that. If we will be providing training on it too, or managing it.
Okay.
The other thing I'm a little worried about is the content host. There was a lot of people I say a lot, but it felt like a lot of people asking about having their own content hosts. And I totally get that. Like they need to have someone who's familiar with their presentation and information to be able to
respond to those questions.
Yeah, respond and break in and help with that. So
then those folks need there's a certain amount of technical acumen that they're going to need to be able to provide that. And so, and what I'm saying is, like the presenter would, either, we can work with that person to get them up to speed, or the presenter can, be okay with the technical host being able to manage things and just having that content person there.
I saw there were a couple questions about having multiple hosts and about that, and there's not a way to do multiple hosts or pin 2 hosts. Like with people who are co-presenting. So let's take, Richard and Mike, for example. I think we'd have to make them both panelists. And then someone host. So I don't know, we'll have to test that some.
So we are still recording. Do we want to go ahead and stop that now? I see a recording button. I'm going to click on it and see if